Our first guest is Minister for Enterprise, Tourism and Employment, Peter Burke, TD. The name of his portfolio is thankfully less of a mouthful than previous years, and I'm sure that everyone is very, very happy, as Neil mentioned, that the campaign to house tourism in an economic portfolio has finally paid off. Minister Burke is no stranger to economics. Before being appointed to government, Deputy Burke, as he then was, sat in the Oireachtas Finance and Public Accounts Committees and was a frequent media commentator on tax, financial and other issues. And I know he's only dying to share those last-minute details of Budget 2026 with us. As you all know, earlier this year, Minister Burke established the Cost of Business Advisory Forum to help drive down business costs, with vital representation from tourism and hospitality on the forum. Within weeks, he will present his new tourism strategy to the Cabinet, and I know, obviously, as Neil mentioned, there is a lot of interest in that. For his maiden ITIC Fireside Chat, please give a very warm welcome to Minister Peter Burke. You're very, very welcome. I'm really nice.
Thank you.
Let's have a chat now. You're very welcome. This is obviously your first visit to the conference. Just picking up on the movement of tourism into an economic portfolio, how significant and important is that?
First of all, I really appreciate the opportunity in being here with everyone. Looking at the clip there, I haven't got my bilaterals concluded with finance and deeper, and listening to the ominous music that was playing over government buildings there, I'm always most afraid to go back. You know, I thought it might be something more soft and fluffy, but obviously we didn't get that. But yes, I think it's very important. I think it really reflects that how much SMEs are critically part of the value proposition that tourism offers, and that when we have tourism now in the heart of the Department of Enterprise, that will be reflected in both the strategy and, most importantly, with our sectoral interests, how we want to develop the sector, because we have to really focus at developing the model, improving our value proposition, and ensuring that the sector is well resourced, that it can absorb so much of that opportunity that is there.
Well, ITIC is looking for 90 million, as you heard. Will we see that investment forthcoming, and how?
Well, obviously, we want to invest as much as we can, and at this point in time, we haven't concluded our budgetary negotiations, but I'm very focused on...
Have you got your allocation yet? The Irish Times this morning said, not just yet, that no minister has received their final allocation.
Yeah, and look, for the audience will be only too well aware when we have a tax package of around €1.5 billion, and it's like everyone, be it if you're trying to manage a household or manage a business or doing your weekly shop, you have to try and manage so many competing interests across the economy, and we are the voice for tourism, which is a very strong voice, and hopefully by the end of the week, when Minister Chambers and Minister Donoghue stand up in the Dáil on Tuesday, that we'll have a very strong package for the sector.
I'm going to get to the budget and the tax package shortly, but first of all, you're going to be making your mark on this sector with your the National Tourism Strategy. When can we expect to see it, and what are going to be the core elements of that strategy?
So we'll have it finalised next month. I want to do some stakeholder engagement as well before we finally publish the strategy. And what we'll be looking at really is, first of all, trying to see where the areas of opportunity are. So first of all, I think we need to really work to develop the model, the SME model that's part of our tourism offering. Secondly, I want to see Fáilte Ireland's remit expanded, that we'll be working with restaurants, because that is very much part and parcel with building up resilience in the sector. I also want to see a very strong All-Ireland food strategy, particularly in the culinary area. I know there's a huge amount of work we can do to really showcase the artisan base that Ireland have, something that's really authentic, something that's really special. And I feel that from travelling, particularly in the European market, we can do a lot more work there in terms of what people's view is of Ireland and its culinary traits and what we have and what we can offer.
So you've obviously got the first draft on stakeholder engagement now, so you must have a fairly good idea of what particular stamp you want to put on it yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're really trying to, as I mentioned, those three areas will be key to the strategy. We'll also have a re-evaluation of the corporate plans of our state agencies to align with the strategy. We'll also try and improve the targets on the sector, enhance the growth we need to see.
So winter is coming, and so are KPIs. Talk to us, because this story sort of broke at the weekend, that our two main tourism agencies would be subject to new metrics. But they're not always subject to metrics.
First of all, I want to
what's
see...
this new initiative?
I'm very focused on to ensure that all agencies realise their ambition and realise their targets. So I want to see, particularly with our state agency in Fáilte, Ireland, which is doing huge work in the Indigenous space, in growing the sector, really looking at what we have to offer. So I think we have to have very strong parameters where we want to see where the growth should be, and that is everyone's feet, including myself, is held to the fire to do that. Obviously, Tourism Ireland is a north-south body, so we link in with our colleagues hopefully for an all-Ireland food strategy. I think that would be very good, and also see how we can improve the opportunity that's in the sector, because a lot of markets, particularly in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region, which we haven't been as active as we should have been over the last 5 years, and with extra resources, I want to get back into those markets.
So is that a change in substance or in tone? You know, because if you've KPIs, well, obviously, you know, what gets measured gets done, but what happens if they don't meet the KPIs?
Well, both. I'll be honest, I'm a very different minister than previous ministers. I'm going to take a very hands-on role in the tourism sector. I expect results. I know that government is going to give significant support in this budget, but equally we need to see results based on that. And I want to help the sector to grasp that opportunity, but also I want to have it very clearly that the Department of Enterprise, Tourism and Employment sets the policy. And I'm very focused on that, you know, it comes from, we're all open to ideas from all sectors and everything, but we need to have a clinical view on, have good policy underwritten by our state agencies doing their very best, which they do, and I want to work alongside them.
So is it sort of a carrot and stick?
No, I wouldn't say a carrot and stick. It's, you know, my trait is I work with everyone. But I do expect results, and we have to work to ensure that when I have a budget, which will be a very strong budget for the sector, we do need to see growth in the sector. Now, bear in mind, and we have to be honest about this, that, you know, 2024 was a bumper year for tourism. We saw double-digit growth, which was phenomenal. And in the start of this year, obviously, we had about 8% less seats because of the Dublin cap towards the first half of the year. It's good to see a 1% increase, about 776,000 visitors in August. So we hopefully will recover. And I want to lengthen the season as well. That's going to be key as well. Like Halloween, sauna and other areas, I think we have a huge amount of opportunity in lengthening the tourism season as well, which will give businesses a better chance of absorbing so much of that opportunity.
Your party has been in government for some time. Why wasn't many people will be asking, why wasn't the public interest test deployed much sooner in respect of the Dublin Airport cap?
I think everyone knows the reason to that. Obviously, we're in a different government now. The last government was a coalition government of 3 different parties, of 3 very, very different views. This government is very focused on improving and enhancing Dublin Airport, and that's what we're going to do. And obviously Minister O'Brien is in the remit for that, and he outlined in a memorandum to Cabinet earlier on this week. Unfortunately, I was in Brussels and wasn't there for it, but I do know that it is explicitly in the plan I brought forward, the action plan for competitiveness and productivity, brought it forward within the first 7 months of government. Even though it was cited for over a year, we got it done quickly because we want to grasp that opportunity to make us more competitive, to ensure that we retain our position as the most competitive economy in the Eurozone. And when you consider that government is going to put about an additional 34 billion into the economy and capital investment between now and 2030, we need to ensure that it's delivered efficiently and that our minds are very much focused on delivery now as a government.
And
that's
what
where
about
I come from.
The other conflicting but needs to be a complementary policy in respect of sustainability, which was a huge focus of your predecessor? Are we at risk of compromising that sustainability in terms of aviation through the increase of the cap, or do you think that's something that can be managed?
I think it can be managed. We are an island economy. I think we have to be honest and reflective of that. We do rely on air travel and aviation, but we need to work on sustainable fuels and the R&D that's taking place in the aviation sector. And that's one thing about Budget 2026. You know, I really want a big R&D stamp as well as other taxation measures, because, you know, we've seen in our economy an increase of about 400% in the spend in R&D. I know in areas like food we have to improve because there's a lot of innovation and practices that Enterprise Ireland are working on that can add a lot of value, enhance productivity for that sector. So I want to see a big R&D budget as well. That'll be very important. And to bring through our business event strategy, which is about €1 billion worth to our economy every year, I think we can do a huge amount of bringing high value jobs into the economy too, which again feed off the tourism offering of the tourism sector.
Housing and accommodation is probably the definitive issue for the Irish economy and for the Irish population at this time. But that does affect the tourism sector. So when you look at the combination of the proposals for legislation for short-term lets, the so-called A and B legislation, coupled with the potential expansion of rent pressure zones nationally, there's a fear that that will be a huge risk to areas like, Mayo, the Western Coast, Kerry, everything, and also to the self-catering industry. Are we at risk of, when we try to address one cure, to cure one ill, that we're going to create others, and how are you going to protect that part of the industry?
Well, there's always risk, but I hope we can mitigate the risk on balance, that we can grow our tourism sector by essentially the legislation we'll bring forward, which will craft a balance between, in our cities, which there's a very significant acute need for housing, and in areas in our country which, being honest, it's not economically viable to deliver a hotel in terms of construction costs, but you need Airbnbs and self-catering
I think there's
sector.
an acknowledgement in the urban, in the big cities, that that will go. But for the self-catering sector, which is very much speaking to one of the priorities, which is how we're going to protect regional.
Yeah, and we will through the legislation that will come forward from the Department of Planning. We'll get a right balance to ensure that where we need accommodation, it will be there. In other words, where hotels are not that prevalent. It does give me good hope when you see the room construction rate is very significant in hotels right now in our cities, which is important. But also, one of the areas a little concern when you actually drill down in the data in relation to utilisation of Airbnbs right across the West Coast. It is very low, which surprised me in relation to some of them only being occupied 2 weekends a month. So I think we need to have a look at that and see, well, in the parameter where society is and bringing the tourism sector, we need to get a balance that, in our smaller, more regional towns, that we're able to accommodate so many people going up and down the Atlantic Way.
So that a national measure doesn't affect other parts
Absolutely.
of the economy. Let's get to the budget. 6 days away, airwaves and newspapers, everything filled with all sort of flyers, speculation, scoops, and otherwise. Before we just get into the details of it, can I ask you just about the tone coming up to this budget, because your cabinet colleague earlier this month, Patrick O'Donovan, Arts, Culture and obviously Sports Minister, accused hoteliers of robbing people up to their eyeballs and warning that the VAT reduction promised in the budget wouldn't succeed. And I'm just wondering, from your point of view, is that backed by evidence, and are those kind of remarks that don't just travel nationally but internationally helpful for a sector that is battling, as you saw in the video and as you know only too well, a whole range of cost of business issues?
Well, first of all, I would say I know many of our hotel owners, many of our family businesses that are involved in the accommodation sector, and the vast majority of them do excellent work and operate to the highest standards and are very genuine in the authenticity of their product. But there are areas of concern, and that's why the CCPC is currently looking at accommodation and the marketplace in relation to it, to assess how competition is performing. And you can see sometimes when you have very big events in relation to the escalation in price, and we have to be careful on that. But
that's
the remarks
pricing.
I would make...
That's dynamic pricing.
Yeah, and the remarks I would make is the majority of them, the majority of hotels are excellent in their product and in their value. Now, I would say, when you say dynamic pricing, you don't see the price of a cup of coffee going up when there's a big match on or a big concert on. But the scale is some of the increases.
For events, for hotels, for other services, for buying tickets, it can and does happen.
Absolutely, that's why the CCP... I am an evidence-based politician, and that's why it's important we get the CCPC to have a look. That report will be due out shortly, and that will be the mechanism which will inform our decisions on it.
Let's go to the VAT, because at the National Economic Dialogue, Taoiseach Simon Harris made the solemn promise the VAT rate for hospitality is going to come in. That solemn promise is under a lot of pressure, particularly when you're looking at, is it going to be a Big Mac tax? Are those big players going to get the value of it? Are you going to be able to hold on to all or some of that, given the scale of the support relative to the overall tax budget proposals?
Well, it's a policy position I'm very much committed to. Everyone will be very much aware.
Not all of your colleagues are.
Everyone would be very much aware that I fought a huge battle over the last government, right up to the very night before budget day, trying to get agreement on this area.
Have you got agreement?
I'm hopeful that we will win the war on this occasion. And critically, I think, on a few areas, There's about 230, 240,000 jobs really dependent on sustainability in this measure. Many of them are in rural parts of our country, provide huge value to their local communities. And critically, I think when you look at the authentic product that Ireland offers through its independent cafes and restaurants, we don't want to lose that to society.
Do you think you're going to distinguish between the fast food outlets, a lot of
I don't want to comment,
but
what I will say very clearly to everyone, I expect fully we will deliver on the 9% commitment.
Will you deliver on January 1st?
I don't want to comment on timing, I don't want to comment on the form it's going to take, because I can't, and it'd be foolish of me to give assurances to people here when the decision fully does not rest with me. But be assured, I am a firm advocate in the corner to ensure that we do get the 9% rate delivered and ultimately take this fight off the table, that we can look at the various different sector representatives in this room and say, hold on guys, you know what we're going to do now? We're going to spend a bit of time in looking at how do we develop our sectors, how do we develop our businesses, be it sustainability, how do we improve innovation that we can draw down government supports there, be it to do your LED lights, your refrigeration upgrades, your kitchen upgrades. How do we look at how do we develop our online portal, our online models, utilising our state agencies like Fall Charon. I want the sectors to sell what I'm offering to the businesses, that they can take advantage of them, and together that we can unite and grow the sector. And these, national arguments that happen every year will be taken off the table around VAT.
So that there will be more certainty. Are you happy that a lot of the state supports, SBCI and others, are actually working for the SME and others that need to accept it? You hear grumblings from time to time is that in theory they're there, but actually the path to get there can be quite challenging. Are we making those supports accessible enough?
We have a huge amount more to do, and that's why over the last number of months since my appointment to this job, I've really focused on doing things simpler, lighter and faster from the perspective of our state agencies, particularly Enterprise Ireland and our LEOs. I want to see us getting into a place where we can turn around grants through our LEO organisations in 24 hours. I think with modern technologies and the proportionate spend versus the risk that is to the taxpayer, we need to be in that space. The idea of completing reams of paper and taking up the most valuable resource that family businesses have, that's their time. Many of them don't have a finance director or HR director. It's all around the kitchen table, and that's why they're losing valuable time in those areas. And that's why we've seen change. I've reduced by 47% the questions attached to sustainability grants. We have our national enterprise hub now, which has over 200 supports online with a call operator at the end of the phone trying to guide businesses to the right area. We have our cost of doing business advisory forum, which is all the regulators in the one room that I will be getting a report on next year. And again, trying to look at the interoperability of many of these regulators and their impact on businesses.
And also the intersectionality. A couple of quick round questions. Bed tax, yay or nay?
I don't like quick round questions. Oh my God.
I'm really good at them. I'm really good at them. Bed tax, yay or nay?
No.
Why not?
My firm belief, and particularly as over a decade in practice as a chartered accountant, when an industry has been under pressure and contracting, you don't tax it. It's different if it's growing at a strong rate, and at the moment we're not in that space, so no.
You spoke about events. We've just obviously had the recent NFL game, and a somewhat lively version of the Ryder Cup has just taken place. How important is events to the Irish tourism sector, and is that one of your targets for growth?
Critical. We have our business events strategy that will be feeding into our tourism strategy. And when you look at the college football, particularly the slogan, more than just a week. I was out in UCD, out in their farm firstly, and secondly in their innovation campus, where we had a number of companies over, meetings, looking at investment in the Irish economy. And critically, when we were in the Mansion House there, we had hundreds of CEOs telling the Irish story, really explaining to the investment when we bring the figures in that Ireland is the 5th leading investor in the US economy. And when you consider our size, our population, our geographical footprint, for us to be able to say that is phenomenal, and we're going to continue that investment, and that will be important.
It's now a two-way street. Can I ask you just about, some of the criticisms, in particular of the VAT, the proposals on VAT has come from a broader assessment of the Irish economy. We are at full tilt, we are at full employment, we obviously have huge infrastructure challenges, but we do have a new troika, IFAC, the central bank, ERSI, warning that we're at risk of overheating this economy. And whilst it's sort of a strange picture because you've had increased and some very high-profile liquidations of hospitality industries, but at the same time you've got this economy at full tilt. Are we at risk of overheating the economy, and are you afraid that this budget could in the long term be inflationary and more difficult?
So I'd make 3 very quick points in relation to that. Firstly, it is important to have watchdogs, and it is critically important that they bark. So government always
Is it
will take
important
heed
to listen
of
to
them.
them?
If you let me make my final 2 points. The second point I want to make is that we have in about our current expenditure envelope, over €2 billion of that will be in capital expenditure. So we've increased capital expenditure by about 107% since 2019, up to 15.8 billion. And what that does, it invests in your future. It's low risk expenditure that invests in the revenue streams of the future in our economy, focusing on energy, which we have to reduce the cost of, on water and housing. And the third point, and critically, which is very important, and over the next decade, we will have €100 billion in our 2 sovereign wealth funds. And that really gives you a very significant insurance policy that you can have a fund that can act in a counter-cyclical manner, really to support the economy as we're going to face challenges in de-globalization, in decarbonisation, in demographics, all those areas that we can meet them. We're in a very different space than we were previously. And it's important to have that broad-based part of the economy. But I think if you look at the VAT rates, Adrian often points this out right across the European Union. We have a very high VAT rate in relation to our hospitality sector. It's something we need to resolve once and for all now, something I'm committed to doing, and something hopefully we will have next year.
My final question, I have so many questions, but I've run out of time. My final question, if you're going to hold our 2 tourism agencies to KPIs, you didn't tell me what you're going to do if they didn't. What are the KPIs that you as tourism minister are going to hold yourself to during your tenure?
Well, it's all about delivery, and I want to see the sector grow. Ultimately, the electorate judge of my performance, be it when I was in European Affairs and now in the Department of Enterprise. People can see that hopefully they can, that I've made a huge amount of change over the last few months. I have an action plan on market diversification, reflecting that we have 41 free trade agreements with the EU, 72 countries, a huge amount of opportunity. Before people were even talking about tariffs, I really stood up at a section within Enterprise Ireland, working with our 950 exporters, looking at strategic consultancy, market diversification, digital process innovation, all those areas to hive out that additional efficiencies. I have now a national plan for competitiveness and productivity in advance of the target in the government, really to manage that 34 billion extra in expenditure that I spoke about. We've also a national affordability energy task force, which is linked in with that. I have a small business unit established in the department in the last few months, looking at every single grant that's going into all the businesses right here. I established a cost of business advisory forum, again taking action on the regulation and reducing red tape. And critically, I was in Brussels, just got in late last night from Brussels, and my God, we're pushing so hard on simplification. We have 6 omnibus additional piece of legislation now that have gone through the Commission. That's been a bit delayed in Parliament. But every single piece of improvement that comes back here, we've put into primary legislation or a statutory instrument quite quickly. And that's what we need to continue doing, simplification. And now we'll have our tourism plan as well, another key tenant in the next month. So those are my actions. And you can see that the tax changes, you're going to see a huge push for R&D in this budget will be delivered, I expect, and a very strong VAT rate for the sector. And also a real plea that I love working with people. I really relish this job. It is the honour of a lifetime. It's such a privilege for me to get this opportunity that I really want to work with the sectors and the representatives that we can focus on now, post this budget. How do we develop the industry, make it more sustainable, and look at the areas that sustainable in terms of viability in the different sectors and improve, be it digital, be it sustainability, all the different horizons and metrics.
Well, thank you for sharing your KPIs. No doubt everybody here will be holding you to them. You can now go and collect your I Survived on ITIC Fireside sticker. But for your generosity and your time, thank you. And we wish you very, very well in the brief.
Thank you, everyone.
Minister Burke.
Thank you. Thanks,